Alright, let me run through what's happened so far. So obviously I've got the neck of the haft fitted for the eye of the axe. It's not a rocket science process. You just begin sanding, shaving, using a rasp, whatever have you, until you start beginning to fit the eye, or to fit the neck to the eye of the axe. Eventually you want to get it where it obviously slides all the way through the top. It's a matter of preference whether you want the neck and the kerf to come over the top of the axe, or you want it to stay flush. That's a preference. That's up to you. I go over the top. I drive a thick wedge that pops it out the sides and prevents any head slippage in the future. It never fails. You do a head properly that way. You never have to use a metal cross wedge. It becomes pretty much useless. I've seated it pretty good. I've got a little bit of shave here, but nothing that I'm not going to just pop away with my knife. So that we've done all that, that's really the hard part, I guess. The wedge, I think, would be the second hardest part of getting the axe hafted correctly. There's a lot of different ways guys do things. This is just the way I do things. All the result is going to be the same in the end. An axe that's well hafted, properly secure, and then it will chop. So I've sized my wedge, and unfortunately I don't have a wedge long enough to fit all the way down the kerf on this one, but it's really close and I don't imagine it's going to hit anyway. I got quite a bit of room on that, so I'm going to keep the wedge pretty thick. I've taken and rounded off all the corners on the wedge, so when I drive it with the mallet it's not going to chip and crack as easily. And towards the front here I've actually just taken it on the sander and just shaped it very slightly on this wedge, but otherwise I'm going to drive it true as is, and hopefully for good results. So I'm going to transition this scene here, and I'm going to oil my wedge a little bit, and then we're going to drive it home. Okay, so I've oiled the wedge, and I just run a bead of oil right over the kerf. Like I said, your method, as long as the end result is the same, is fine. Why I choose to do this is if you pound them dry and your eye's a little bit tight, you'll begin to shave the wedge right off, and it'll peel and curl on the sides. When you do this, you're just taking away what you could be putting in the eye to lock it in. When you do it with oil, it just squeezes all the way in, and I can show you some axes that have just taken on the shape of the kerf, or the wedge has, and completely morphed its shape, but I never shaved it because I literally jammed all of that wedge inside. So the reason I oil it is to get as much wedge in there as possible and not shave it out the sides. When I shape my wedge, it meets the steel on each end, and it slightly, very, very, very slightly tapers a little bit wider, or a bit longer at the top, because when a drift is punched through an eye, it's not only wider here, but it's also slightly tapered. So you want to fill that all the way down through, and I just, drive the rest home. You can obviously use a hammer, you can use a mallet. A rawhide mallet works pretty good if it's big enough, and you can use a rubber mallet, although I find it doesn't work as well. Steel hammer breaks the wedge up, which isn't a problem if you drive it all the way down, but I always say if you're going to do a job, do it right the first time. Try to do as little breakage as possible. Sometimes it's inevitable, but try to do the best job you can. I got this piece of marble block down here that I use. Sometimes on the bigger axes I get down on towards the yard on a cinder or something, but with this boy's head I think we should be able to drive it home. So I've already put it in about a ½ an inch. That's how much it's allowed me to push. I could probably get a little further, and I usually just start by getting it seated well, and it's driving pretty good now, and then you just want to make sure before you. And you see it still bounces even with this size axe, so get on this. So yeah, and some pieces chip at the end because I taper it, but I want it that way, at least I know that it's filling that entire taper that's in there. And what I've done, and it's messy till I clean it up, is I've blowed out the sides on this over the size of the eye on the axe head. It's not going anywhere. It's done. So I'll clean it up and then I'll get back to you. I'll throw in a few tips and tidbits, guys. The reason I do the wedges the way I do, the way I oil them, is what happens. You get a case like this. I got a boy's head. It's got a very thin eye. The grain is not great on this, but that's not important to the lesson. It's a smaller axe. I don't consider it as important until I get up to a feller that I see the shock and the handle change, or I'd be worried about it, you know, blowing apart. But when I squeeze the wedge in, I hit a weak point in my neck of the axe, and it was right here. It literally broke off at some point, but because I drive the wedge in with oil that thick, it literally takes its place. The wedge squeezes in around, pops out around, and fills the space. And as I oil it here in front of you, you can see that here, where this, where the neck should have continued up like right here, it didn't, but yet it's still filled. The eye is completely filled. The wedge is, you know, is mushroomed over the top, and you can save yourself some trouble doing it that method. Some other guys in the forum do it this way. I know Bax is a loyal believer in doing it this way and blowing over the sides as well. And I think our proof is in the pudding. As I get out and use my axes, I don't have a head slip. I never have any problems like that. So just a little tip. And now I'm going to give you the piece of what's required of the lesson of hafting the axe for the elective. Alright guys, there's a lot of things I could show you to get this lesson done. I'm a firm believer that some things are just common sense. To shape this neck for this eye, as you see, you got to work on a sander. Sometimes when I want that special touch, I'll save myself some time and I'll use a hand rasp to get that perfect fit. Case in point is, you know, and if this lesson is up for a couple of years, obviously it won't be so relevant, but I finished a Kelly registered axe that was Connecticut pan. It was beautiful. I wanted the utmost perfect match. I spent the last bit rasping and sanding, making the eye perfect. You don't have to go through all those steps, but it's nice. For the lesson, you gotta show pictures and or video of the process of you hafting your axe. Handle that's not connected to the head, see some pictures and video of that. See the working being done on it, either the sanding, rasping, or the sander. Hand tools or power tools are fine on this lesson. Go either one if you want. I want to see the wedge sized up in pictures and video, and what you're using to drive it. And by showing all this, it shows the proper process of making sure this is going to fit. You choose to blow out the neck over the eye is your choice, or whether to leave it flush on the head to clean it up nice, that's your call. Metal wedge is your call or not. Whether you use oil or not is your call, but the entire process and picture videos of an axe being hafted by you. And the ending of the lesson will be you showing pictures and or video of you chopping with that axe. Because obviously I want to see it that it was, the head and the wedge was all seated properly and it's holding true. So you're going to have to show a little bit of chopping with it in pictures or video. And that will be lesson completed. If there's any questions, I think everything's covered. I'll detail it out in text below in the post. Any other questions, PM me or just ask them in the thread. Actually, just ask them in the thread, and that'll be easier because everybody can see the answer. They might have the same question. So that's pretty much it. And I hope a lot of you guys join in doing that. I expect to see any of you guys doing the bush class and the axe mob to be taking charge. And you know, I'm a firm believer, if you're going to use a tool, know how to repair it. If you're going to use an axe, know how to rehaft it. Just like a canoe, if you're going to canoe, you should know how to make your own paddle. So that's it. Thanks a lot, guys, and get working.